All right, good evening, everyone. It is the 2nd of April. It's already in the second quarter. Can't believe that. So good fishing days are coming up. Let me see what's coming up on the 13th. Not this weekend, but the following weekend. Hopefully, if Frank could still, if we need to cancel, we will, Frank, don't worry. But it was the American Legion, so we'll call that tentative right now. And then the following weekend after that is the Vets Fish Free at Bennett. It's a non-Project Healing Water event, but we're still going as Project Healing Water. So we're still showing up. Whoever wants to go, we're going to be there. We're going to be fishing. The good news is, since it is kind of on my own dime, any participant that's out there, I'm going to be fishing with you. So I don't think I'll be manning too many of the tables, or not at all, on Saturday. I want to make sure I take all the participants out there and make sure I'm getting them catching fish. So, but a lot going on. I will be on and off this meeting. I had a last minute family come in, so I'm going to head this over to Carl real quick, and he's going to be talking about some cool things that he saw at the Sow Bug Roundup out in Mountain Home, Arkansas, a couple weeks ago. It was fun. It was my first time and won't be the last. That was a lot of fun. You could go walk around the events, watch a lot of fly tying, buy some stuff, and then, cut out a little bit early and go fishing for trout around there. Some really good areas to go fishing. So with that, I will turn this over to Carl. Carl, I'll be checking in on you in a little bit, and I'll see you guys soon.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Mick. Well, let's see. As Mick said, we went to the Sow Bug this year. This was my first time going in about 21 or 22 years. I used to go when I lived in Cape Girardeau, and I would fish down on, I'd fish more of the 11 point, and when I lived in Cape Girardeau, and then I would typically go down to, there's another river down there from Mammoth Spring. I think it's called Big Spring. That's basically a tailwater fishery that feeds down below there, and it's a stocked river down there in Arkansas. And then I'd also fish the North Fork of the White, and then of course the White River when I would go down there. If you guys haven't gone to the Sow Bug, it's kind of a unique fly show in a sense where it's got its own sort of Midwestern representation, maybe is the best way to say that. I've been to the Atlanta Fly Show when we lived in Alabama, and that's a big show. I mean, there's people from all over the United States selling their guiding services and tying flies and casting instructions and fly tying instructions. And, the Atlanta show is a big show. If you've never gone, it's something, to put on your list to go do. But the Sow Bug is its own unique thing. I would say 20 some years ago, you'd walk into this old community building and might see 50 to 100 fly tyers from all over the United States. And it's grown since then. They had a lot of big representation there this year. Dave Whitlock, who many of you have heard of or maybe even have met in the past, a very phenomenal artist, writer, trout fisherman, instructor. He lived down there for a long time, and then he got sick and had passed away in 2022. His wife Emily was there. I got to meet her. I met Dave Whitlock. I think it was him who I met. I didn't really know who he was at the time. And only reason I think it was him is because he was tying this grasshopper pattern. I'm like, oh, Dave's hopper, what a big deal, and it was a big deal because it was Dave Whitlock's hopper. So I had some interesting stuff. I told Nick I would just share some things that I learned there. They have seminars also at the Sow Bug. And I'll just go through what I went what I experienced, on the whole trip here to kind of share it with you guys. Um, so starting out on Thursday, the day the sow bug does start, I drove down from St. Louis and I went to the 11 point. I caught about a 12-inch rainbow on a just a pheasant tail size 18 pattern. The pattern that's been working very, very well for me this winter. And uh, I, I tried some different flies, and that's the 11 point. And if you guys haven't been to the Current lately or any of the other rivers, they're really low this year. Of course, Missouri's in a moderate drought, and it's a little easier to find the fish. Maybe that's one reason I've had a little more success, because it's easier to find the deeper pools or where they might be hiding. Um, then I drove down after fishing for about 3 hours on the 11 point. I went down to Mountain Home and checked in. And the next morning on Friday, I got up really early and I went fishing on the rim shoals. This is kind of a pattern that I developed the first 2 or 3 years I went down there. I'd fish 11 point and then hit rim shoals, and then I would go up to the sow bug. And so there were three presentations there on Friday that I really, really, really wanted to see. Um, One was Dave Heist. He's from SIU at Carbondale. I'll talk about him in a little bit. The next one was Davey Wotan. I saw him do a presentation 20 some years ago when I was there on a shad pattern, and I thought he was kind of this crazy little guy with a big cowboy hat from Wales, and uh, he's a very interesting character, and I'll tell you a little more about that. And then I listened to Tim Flagler's presentation on what how trout eat and why they eat it. And I didn't get a lot of good notes on that because he had a lot of pictures. And the one thing I would say about the sow bug this year at this new place they had it, it was very difficult to hear in the rooms that they had. The microphones and stuff that they had set up were not working. So, after banging on an anvil for the first 10 years of my working life, I don't hear very well, especially with background noise. So I had to kind of scoot up into the rooms when to trying to find a seat where I could actually really, really hear. Um, so anyway, so those are the three presentations I heard. So I'll start with Ed Heist from Carbondale, and his presentation was Missouri trout genetics. Um, and the big question is, are the McLeod rainbows the purest McLeod rainbows that we have in Missouri? So it got really, really geeky, really nerdy in genetics. He's a he loves to fly fish, and when he was at the beginning of his presentation, he talked about um, he this is a project he wanted to work on. He sent a request to the Missouri Department of Conservation asking him if they could get permission to shock the streams to take fin samples of genetic so they could get some genetic material to measure. And one of the things he said, the genetics, uh, as you guys have known, the technology today is far more superior since the human genome got mapped than it was 10, even 20 years ago. And so he was basically using some of that technology to identify the genetic strains of the Missouri trout. And the question was, are they really true McLeods or just, descendants of the McLeods? And so they told him that he couldn't shock, he had to fish. He had to catch them by angling. And he goes, oh, darn. Well, they were kind of joking because he's a pretty good angler and loves to fly fish. So he said it was the first time he ever got paid to fish. with his job. So he was a interesting character, but very knowledgeable on what he did. And what he did was when they took these fin samples, they just clipped a corner off for the genetic material, and then years ago, and for those of you who don't know, the rainbows in Missouri were stocked in the early 1800s, or excuse me, late 1800s, early 1900s in Missouri, and they had these rail cars that brought a rainbow trout from California, from the McLeod area, and brought him into the area. Well, he talked about how there was damming over the years, and the true McLeod is actually in the McLeod, and the ones below that are, you know, base, the hypothesized was that they're probably more Sacramento type river, which is a strain of the McLeod rainbow, and so he basically discussed that on the whole scientific procedure. He had lots of charts and how he could dial into it. So his thing was he went from the outside in to dial in. So he separated out the genetic material. He went, there's 9 blue ribbon streams that are holding wild trout in Missouri. Um, but the with those strains, the thought is, well, these are definitely McLeod rainbows that everybody thinks. Well, they look like them, and that sort of stuff. Um, his main thing was that, yeah, there is a lot of genetic traits of the McLeod in there, but there's also a lot of genetic traits in the trout that are stocked in Missouri. So the Missouri stalker trout that they sampled too have a very similar characteristic of genetic wise of the McLeod rainbow. But the net effect was that the truest strain of it actually came from Sacramento River, which is part of what McLeod's came from. And actually, the trout in Missouri actually have steelhead genetics in them as well. Well, steelhead tend to get big, and we don't have big trout in a lot of our Missouri rivers, not steelhead size anyway. But that strain is in there, so there's been a lot of crossbreeding. And the other thing that's happened too is a lot of the trout that are stocked in the white ribbon areas, there's no trout stocked in the blue ribbon areas, but trout that are stocked in the white ribbon areas tend to kind of go upriver and will end up crossbreeding with the wild trout population that's there. And so he said there's 2 things. He goes, one, it mixes it up, but the other side is it actually probably increases some diversification of survival. Um, and he said where you takes 2 environments. I'm trying to remember some of my genetics back from college, but environmental impacts affect how trout survive. Of course, genetic impact, what your gene pool is, affects how you survive as well. And so that basically, he said the Missouri trout are not red bands. They have some stripes and some steelhead characteristics, but the net effect was Missouri trout are not 100% McLeod rainbow trout. And of course, there was a lady that was there that already knew this and was friends with him. And she's like, no, don't say that because I love the McLeod rainbows. Those are pure McLeods. And he goes, no, they're not. Not pure McLeods. Now, what he did say is he dialed down even further in his genetics and showed some charts and had some really interesting comments. He goes, now, some of the areas that haven't been stocked over, certain years, the closest resemblance of the McLeod rainbow genetic wise is in Cane Creek. And I've not fished Cane Creek, so I don't know. So you know, after that presentation, you get to wander around a little bit and see all the fly tires and talk to different people and see some really cool stuff. He was he was walking around, and I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, Ed." I introduced myself. I said, "I've got a picture of what I think is a pure McCloud rainbow." And he goes, "It's not pure McCloud." I said, I know what you said. I heard your presentation, but I want you to look at this picture and I want you to tell me." And he goes, I looked at it and I said, "Can you tell me which creek this is from?" He goes, "Yeah, you caught that on the Little Piney." And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly right." And he goes, "What the genetic difference is what they've survived with." So I said, one of the things I said to him, it seems to me when I look at these trout out there on the Little Piney, are more of their eyes seem larger, um, but you still see those, dark bands on them. And he goes, "Well, those are some of the genetic characteristics, but," he goes, if you knew what the Sacramento trout river looked like, then you would be able to see that that's definitely a cross of that to some degree." So anyway, that was, about it with Ed Heist. It was a really interesting conversation. So the next presentation I went to is David Wotan. So I totally embarrassed myself here. I'll just go ahead and admit it. Um, I've been a big fan of the non-slip loop knot on nymphing this winter. I've had very good success with it. It seems I've had more success with that than I have just tying a clinch knot. But the theme of the uh, of the whole um, of the sow bug this year was the elegant wet fly. So Davy Wooten, like I said, he's from Wales, and he was doing this presentation on the wet fly, and he was very hard to hear, but he was going over some of the history of the wet fly. And um, you know, he said way back in the day, from in Great Britain, he said, we had two types of fly fishing. We had dry fly fishing and wet fly fishing, and back then you either did one or the other. Sometimes you would see people who would do, you know, both, but they were, he goes, that was a little bit frowned upon, because you were either supposed to use one or the other, in methods of fishing. And he goes, "That's just a bunch of hogwash." But he goes, "That's just, the way it was looked at back then." And then he talked about different types of fishing materials that they used. He talked about how they used to make leaders out of, or tippet and leaders out of horse tail, and and silk braided uh, lines, not like anything that we have today, with all the poly materials that are out there. And he said, in his English accent, and I could not mimic it to save my life, but he goes, "It was a real pain in the ass." He said, he goes, "Because you had to soak them before you went to bed, um, and you got up and you dried them and you put them back on your line and you went fishing and you got home, you had to wash them and you had to let them dry. Then you had to put them back up." And he goes, "Fishing was a real pain in the butt back then. It was so much more work than it is today." And I just thought that was an interesting comment, that he had from just some of the technology that we have today. But back to his conversation, talking about the wet fly. Basically, a wet fly is defined as a soft hackle or uh, a winged wet pattern. And he said that's basically what they used back then, in sort of a, in a fishing way. They ended up. So he talked about some of his, the ways he fishes. He fishes three wet flies at once. Um, and he talked about, fishing, downstream versus upstream, and fishing three flies. And so if I had a board, I'd show you, but basically if you had a square board up here and this was the river, you know he talked about, if you're fishing up, you fish up and out, up and out, up and out, and you go farther out, and then you cover more water that way. Well, then he talked about how he builds his leaders. But after listening to him, this is the part where I embarrassed myself. I went up with my extreme knowledge I have with uh, non-slip loop knots on nymphing. And I said, Dave, I said, I got a question. I said, of course, I was trying to ask questions, and it's kind of one of those things where, when there's somebody that's sort of famous, they always ask lots of questions. And unless I'm a little passive, so I just try to be polite and stand to the side. And after everybody was kind of done, I caught him after it, and I said, and I'm kind of glad I did. I said, and so for those of you know, the Davy knot was invented by him. Okay, for those of you who don't know the Davy knot, it's a very easy knot to use. I used to know how to tie it. I've used clinch knots over the years and gone to a non-slip. Kind of forgot about the Davy knot. I know we've talked about it on our calls before. Um, so I said to him, I said, would there ever be a case of wanting to use a non-slip loop knot on setting up a wet nymphing rig like you suggested? He goes, no, there's only one knot. And basically walked away from me. And he goes, it's kind of turned back a little bit. And he said, don't make it too complicated. And I think that was one of the really coolest things I learned, is not making it complicated. So kind of when he talked about when he was setting up his rigs, Bill, you asked me a question a few weeks ago. I was showing the triple surgeon's knot with um, using it on a hopper dropper with a half hitch to kind of keep it away from itself. Um, Davey says the best way to do this is if you're going from a 5x to say a 6x tippet on the end of your leader, he said make your 5x your top fly. He goes, because that's the part that's holding on to the top of the leader at the strongest point. And so I thought, well, that really kind of makes sense. I've always kind of used the bottom part of that, my tag end, to do it, and I've not had any problems with it. But I've not really caught any, other than the 18-inch brown I caught, about a month or so ago. I never had anything break on me. So anyway, I'd pass that on to you, Bill, because I thought it was worth noting.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was going to say I've used the Davy, and I have used the non-slip, what we call mono loop, right? I use that when I know that the tippet is a little big for the fly. So that way it allows the fly to bounce along and not be basically as tight to the line. Does that make sense? That's why the mono loop works so well, because it allows it to flow it easy. And it's an easy knot for me to make. The other one I make is called the Duncan loop. But yeah, I use both of them. Davy, I use my little hackle pliers, right?
Right. Yeah, that's an easy way to do that. Yep. Or it
But
makes
yeah,
it easier. Yeah, definitely. Definitely does. Um, so anyway, so when he said that's the only knot, and I kept saying to myself, you idiot, that the Davy knot. Duh, of course he's gonna say that. The only knot. It's the only knot as far as Davy Wooten's concerned, it's the only knot that exists. But if you don't know how to do it, it's an easy learn. I went back when I got back to the hotel that night, I pulled it up on YouTube, and I said, oh, I'm gonna tie it 10 times and remember how to do it. And after doing it a couple times, I got it. So, I'll get back to the fishing here in a little bit. I then went to Tim Flagler's presentation, and again, it was really hard to hear. But he's a phenomenal individual. I got to meet him and visit with him a little bit afterwards. He's just so passionate about what he does. and uh, the, he talked about flies, and he has a tremendous amount of videos on underwater fishing, how fish respond underwater. And the big takeaway I got out of a lot of what he was saying was, like, especially on nymph patterns, he goes, if you're letting those he goes, nymphs, he goes, they don't float around just like in a certain vertical direction. He goes, they're going all over the place. Here, let me show you, and so he'd show videos of, mayfly nymphs just kind of just up and down and sideways. So he goes, there's no really one right way to have that, get in the stream other than get it in the stream and let it float around in there. So I'm thinking, well, there's the non-slip loop knot concept, right? You're not holding it right on there. So, and then he was kind of funny in a couple other ways. He was getting ready to show a video, and he'd say, all right, you're not going to unsee this picture. And I'll try to explain it the best I can. But he showed a video. He had a caddis nymph, or excuse me, caddis larva pattern. And he had it on an indicator, and he goes, this is what it looks like under the water. And he just shows it, and he goes, this is on a non-slip loop knot. And he just shows it, and it's just this little larva pattern, and you just see it kind of going down the water like this. Not any action, not anything. He goes, now here's what it really looks like. So he shows one down on the bottom, and it's just kind of squirming all over the place. And he goes, I don't know how you imitate that. So other than just getting something to drag along the bottom, he said. So it was kind of, he had a little bit of humor with regard to how some of that worked. So it was really, really cool to meet him. So kind of back on the fishing. So after all of that on Friday, one of the program, the Project Healing Waters program down there did have some people tying. The program lead that was down there, I can't remember his name. Mick could probably help me out with that. But we talked a little bit. He goes, hey, they got the dams shut off this morning early, so the water's going to be really low up at Bull Shoals. So it'd be, supposed to be cloudy tonight, so we should have a good, mayfly, hatch coming on in the evening. And I'm like, oh, cool. Because every time I've ever gone to Bull Shoals, the generators are running 5 or 6 generators, or even 8. And if they're running 8 generators on the White, that freaking river is running about 23,000 CFS. You're not going to weight it. It's not weightable. I have fished it like that, and I can think maybe only one time in my life I actually caught a fish in the 6 times I've been down there when the water was high, and it was a big, heavy nymph pattern weighted down in the bottom of it, and it didn't really. I thought my fly was actually caught in a current or on a rock or on a log, and I actually had a fish. So, I mean, it's very difficult to wade when the generators are up. And fortunately, the generators were way down. The one thing I'll just as a side note would say is, we're in a moderate drought around here, and especially in the Ozarks. Hopefully that gets fixed. But crossing over, into Missouri and the North Fork Lake and that area, how low it was kind of like, oh, this looks like New Mexico where I came from, because everything's low there. And, it was just really kind of scary. The lake levels are a little lower than normal. There's still water there, don't get me wrong, but generation, obviously we've had some changes with the climate, for whatever you want to believe are the causes. There's no disputing that there's challenges there, but that was a takeaway for me coming down and looking at some of the reserve water that are on these tailwater fisheries that are way low. Obviously the trout have survived well in that area. Um, uh, so let's see here. So then on uh, Saturday morning, I met Mick at we kind of got caught up with each other, and I had one of my better days of fishing that I've had in a long time. Um, so when I fished rim shoals, I didn't talk about that too much, I don't think. When I fished rim shoals, I had a pattern that I used was just I tried some nymphs and I wasn't having any, my mayfly nymphs. So I tried this pattern that I've been tying, and it's I got, and if we got time to tie it, I will, but it's just a uh, I got gills on this mayfly, and um, it, in fact, first cast out, I caught a fish on it at Rim Shoals, and then a little bit later caught another one, and then I was like getting cold, and it was like 42 degrees, and the water temperature was 52, and thought I was feeling a leak in my waders. So I thought, well, I didn't want to miss these seminars, so I went to the sow bug. But then on Saturday, Saturday morning when I went fishing, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try these, you know, mayfly, pheasant tail size 18 that I've been doing well with down there, just to see what I could find out. Wasn't getting anything off of that. It didn't matter how I presented it, casting upstream with a mend, no drift going down, nothing. Had strike indicator on, nothing. Fishing it down deep. The water wasn't really deep per se, 2 to 3 feet where I was at. They weren't running any generation. So um, I decided I was dealing with a non-slip loop knot. So then I said, well, hell, the fly that I was caught the first fish on, I should try next. So I took it and I went, and casted it down, no weight, no strike indicator. And I just let it cast down and let it kind of just sink down in the bottom. And I just let it float down in the river. And I was doing just bumping my rod, just giving it a little bit of action every once in a while. And I caught a fish. And I went, maybe I'm onto something here. So I brought him in and did it again, caught another one. Did it again, caught another one. Did it again, caught another one. I caught 7 fish like that in an hour and a half. Um, and by that time, my waders were soaked and my foot was cold. And I went back up and I saw Mick, and he was ready to go back to the sow bug. So we went to the sow bug to kind of see if we won any big prizes or anything that we raffled, put our names in the hat for. And, you know, that was basically it. So I would encourage you guys, if you got questions, I'll answer those now. You know, and if you want me to tie this fly that I've been working on, I will. So,
And I'm back, so I could spotlight you.
okay. Any questions on anything I was rambling on about?
Except sawbug.
Where's Rim Shoals?
It is from Mountain Home. It's kind of south and west, and there's a public access point there. I've always had the 4 times I've fished that. I've always caught fish there. It's always a great place to catch because there's a shoaling area, and down there, and everything is about 20 minutes from Mountain Home. So if you go to Mountain Home, whether you go to the North Fork of the White, or you go to Bull Shoals or Rim Shoals, or even down to Norfolk, where the confluence of those two rivers are, you're within 20-25 minutes of some really world-class fly fishing.
Carl, is Rim Shoals downstream on the White from Mountain Home?
Yes.
Yeah, I've fished it down there. I used to go down and hire a guide and run a drip boat down through there, and caught some really nice browns in that stretch.
Oh yeah, I've had to. I've had to fish that about 10 years ago. My former employer, he wanted to go take customers on a fishing trip on the White, and I'm like, well, can we go fly fishing? He goes, no, because people don't know how to do that and it's too hard. I'm like, well, I want to do that. And he's like, no, we're going to fish with bait. I'm like, well, you suck. So anyway, um, oh, couple things. I just remembered I had, okay. So one of the, and I sent Mick some pictures of this, but one of the things that this is really an interesting point here. I met this guy named Dutch Boffman, and he's from Texas, and he was doing hackle. He was weaving hair hackle for dry flies, and it got developed back in the early 1900s. And this is the Norman McLean days, okay? And fishermen back then were having a hard time with the flies they were using with the feathers that they had at the time, where they would get saturated and it would lose movement. And one of the key things that were, I was just listening to Tom Rosenbauer's podcast about, the four things when you catch and fish. It's first size, color, and what am I missing? Size, color, and shape. And the other fourth thing that they were talking about on this last podcast of Rosenbauer's was action. And that's just what this Tom or Dutch Bauman was talking about, action. And so basically he was taking moose hair, elk hair, and tail fibers, soaking and gluing them like 3 strands at a time, letting them set level. And then he was weaving them. And what they ran into was a guy back then who actually was a wig maker. And he goes, I can help you with that. And so basically he makes these 3/4 inch plus or minus, depending on the size of the fly, these hair hackles. And he weaves them, and then he trims them to the he wants and lets them dry. And he was showing how to go through in his half hitch and his roundabout deal on it. I'll try to get his website is www.flyfishingskills.com.
Yeah, and if you wanna see him actually do a weave, if you go out to Alan Gretchen Beatty's YouTube site, he did that for Alan Gretchen, about a year ago.
Oh, nice.
And last week, he actually shows you how to do the weave he uses the 2-wire technique, because there's a 2-wire and a 3-wire. And
Yes.
he uses the 2-wire technique. And then last week, he tied 2 flies using weaves on Al's channel. And that's also on his YouTube channel this week. So.
And he showed the full weave. I think it was an 1.5-hour show or program for FFI International. It was like about 2.5 months ago. Remember that? Because he did a full weave, showed exactly how he folded it over, created his stick,
Yeah, but
everything else.
but that's not on the internet yet, Bill. They haven't
No, I
posted
know.
those yet.
Oh, they haven't? Oh, okay. I don't know. I just think he did it.
But well, anyway, it was really, it was really a treat to just run across it and look at it and going, what are you doing? And he's like, it's a hackle weave, and was explaining it to me. And I thought, it's really cool. It just adds another element, to all the different types of things you can do with your flies, So, then the other thing is, I'll do a little promo. I found these scissors, and they're called a Drominus Fly Company, and the guy that invented these actually has a buddy who does builds surgical tools, and he wanted to make a better scissor. And Androminus Fly Company at gmail.com. Anyway, I bought the more expensive ones. He had some that were 15, and I bought these $25 ones. But I love these things. These are amazing scissors. So just a little plug for these guys. I've really enjoyed using them. Very, very sharp, and I was kind of like,
The serrated heads,
huh?
are they serrated blades?
No. and it's got a little notch on here where you can tighten it up if you want to. One or two has a little bubble, notch on here. They're not serrated that I can tell. They might be, but I don't think they are. And so when you go to these things, I look at these fly fishing shows. It's kind of like if you're going to Vegas, you put as much money as you know you're going to lose in your pocket, and then try to budget it when you look at things. So like I took $100 with me to kind of like, okay, this is what I'm going to spend on lottery tickets or, or raffle tickets and items that, would be cool to have. So I'm a little picky going through stuff, and I had 25 bucks left in my wallet, and I go, all right, I'm going to go buy these scissors. And I was looking at him, hemming and hawing, and this guy walked up and he's like, hey, how you doing, bud? He's talking to this guy, and he's like, yeah, I need 5 more pairs. He goes, I gave all my old scissors away, and I'm going to get some more for myself. And he looks over at me. He goes, have you had one of these yet? I go, no. I go, this will be the last scissors you ever buy. Because I've been tying for 30 years. I'm never buying another scissors. This guy makes good scissors. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. They're titanium coated, by the way. They make one. It's 29 bucks, and it's got a titanium coating to it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what they are.
They're razor sharp. They really look cool. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I just looked them up on the web. Andromeda Fly Company. They
Yep.
make different sizes too, different kinds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what kind do you have? I see a whole bunch of different kinds on there.
Me? Or
Yeah, you. Yeah.
Oh, I got the titanium ones.
Tungsten carbide, titanium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, these are the 4-inch purple titanium razors, is what I got right here.
Mm-hmm.
Purple.
Yeah, I went out on the
Okay.
wild side. There's different colors, but I don't plug too many stuff, but I've got some Dr. Slick. I still got Dr. Slick scissors that I got 20 years ago at a raffle down at the Sow-Bug. So, I still use them, and they still work just fine. I just thought these were cool, and they are. So anyway, that's all I got, unless you guys want me to tie. Did we lose Mick?
No, I'm still here. I was just noticing Tony. Nice to see you. Tony's new with us, so I don't know if he was able to say hi or anything, but
Hi, Tony.
Hi,
Hi.
Tony.
Hi, hey, I was having trouble with my my webcam on my computer, and so I had to go to my phone to log in. So I wasn't able to mute myself. But yep, this is my first meeting, and I hope to be able to join some future meetings as well.
yep, I'll get you on the email. If I haven't already put you on there, I'll have to double check. I can't remember. Ever since that Mending the Line movie got to Netflix, my inbox is just
Oh,
filled with people. It's like
oh wow!
wanting
I
to come
didn't-
in, which is a good thing. We're reaching people, but I'm looking at over a dozen right now. I'm looking at my emails. I'm like, wow, I have a lot of responses, and I've got quick responses for them, but that movie ended up being #1 movie for a couple days on Netflix, which is a really good movie if you've had a chance to see it.
On that, Nick, on that, because I brought that up, when I heard Tom Rosenbauer talk about it with the director, and then it came out, it was going to be in the movie theaters, and then it got canceled. And then I actually got to watch it I subscribed to Fly Fishing TV. And they had it on there. They've had it on there for probably a couple months.
Yeah.
And then one of my buddies that works with the Nashville program in Healing Waters, he's like, "Hey, Mending the Line, have you seen it yet?" I said, "Oh yeah, that's old news. I've already seen it." No, I said, "No, dude, you got to watch it." And he texted me this morning. He goes, "Yeah," he goes, this is really good." And I said, and like you said too, it's like, like Jim Saraceno said in a group text, where they were talking about something. It's like, it just goes to show, how important what we do, what we're involved with is. So
Yeah.
it's really, really, really nice to see that.
Yep. Even, while watching it, sometimes some of the parts hit and it's like, yeah, I remember that feeling and, really enjoying it. One part I kind of laughed at, we do not, for any of the new participants that I tell them, this isn't like the Karate Kid. I'm not going to make you clean up a fly shop to earn your way. And I was like, oh no, don't do that. We welcome you right away. We're going to be, showing you how to tie. We're not going to put you to work at all. We have fun here. So that was the only part that I was like, oh, don't do that. But I guess there was going to be a message in there somewhere and I just missed it. But no, it's, we'll have fun times. We have a couple events coming up. Tony, I don't know if you've fly fished before or this going to be totally new to you, but
Well, I've been fly fishing about 50 years.
okay, then you're going to teach us a thing or two.
I don't guess that's the case, but I did hear a lot of discussion about sow bug. I actually would have been down there this year. One of my closest friends retired to Mountain Home, and he's actually the coordinator for the raffles and auctions there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, John Barnhart, and you may have seen him there.
Yeah, I've probably seen him. I just don't know the name and face together, but
yeah,
that was my first time.
I fished down there a lot. I was just down this past weekend, as a matter of fact, celebrating my retirement, and I had my daughter and her fiance down there, and it was his first time fly fishing. It was not her first time, but she's certainly not very experienced. But we caught a few fish on the White, and she had a great morning. Easter morning, she caught 5 up by the dam on Bull Shoals. So it was a great weekend, family fly fishing.
I don't know where it was all new to me. Wherever Carl and I ended up meeting, that was, I think, the North Dam.
Yeah, North Fork of the North Fork.
Yeah,
the North Fork of the White at North.
Yep.
Yeah, and I caught one nice one there, and I had 2 break off. It was,
oh my goodness,
I saw the first one, I think maybe I did something wrong, but then the second one, when I set the hook, I just saw a tail come out of the water and the base of the tail was like this. I'm like, oh my God, that's so, and about that time his laugh at me broke. He's like, you're not even in the same ballpark as me. And
yeah.
That's
the thing about those rivers down there. You just never know. On the White and the North Fork, you just never know when all of a sudden you're going to be into a five or bigger pound fish. There's enough of them in there that it just happens. My buddy John was out Sunday afternoon after sow bug, kind of recovering from working all week, and he caught a 22-inch brown down at Wildcat Shoals.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So, yep, it's worth a trip. That was our first one. Wife liked it as much, and so we both got the year. We didn't buy the couple day pass. We bought the year pass for fishing. So we're gonna try to make it down there a couple times. It's just learning it. It looks like fun, so we'll be back. But a lot of the things we do around here is we, hit local. We'll hit, Merrimack and Bennett, and then we'll try to do some of the ponds for some of the warm water fish. Jim and I think it's May, we'll be going on a guided tour of a lake really close to my house, and he's going to show us how to carp fish the area. So near Creve Coeur Lake, and I'm kind of just in St. Charles across the river. So there was a fishing show in Illinois. I'm trying to think of where it was, but it wasn't too far. And I showed up, and for the most part, there was only 2 people that were doing fly fishing, and one gentleman as a guide. And so I was just talking to him, and when he said that, talking about carp and gar, and I'm like, yeah, it's something I always wanted to try, but I just don't know where to go. And I know they're kind of local. And he goes, well, I do a guided tour, Creve Coeur Lake. And I'm like, that's 10 minutes from my house. So it's like, all right, let me send you, we swipe my card for half the trip. So we'll be going out in May, and hopefully if that works out, we could drag some people out there, because I've heard those are fun to go for, that you might not want to eat them, but boy, do they put up a fight. So
Yeah, I've heard so much about fly fishing for carp in the last I don't know, 15 years or so. In fact, Dave Whitlock kind of put it on the map years ago. He was, of course, from down White River area. I've hooked one carp in my life, and it was by accident. I was fishing for bluegill in a pond, and I hooked about a, I don't know, 15-pound carp on a 4-weight, and that did not last long, that fight.
and we have one of our guys, I think it was it Dave Witt, said he caught one on a tenkara.
Oh, goodness.
So he was like, what, he same thing, going for bluegill, and what was this, came up and grabbed it, and all of a sudden, I think he fought it for a long time, but he didn't want to break the tenkara, so he just took it easy and still ended up catching it. So
It's amazing.
yeah. So other than that, good to have you. It's always good to see new faces. We'll be
And
getting.
we've got Eric. We've got a guy here by the name of Eric Ramos that is part of Project Healing Waters and is one of the volunteers, and he fishes for carp. So I've kind of hooked up with him, and I'm hoping to do. He gets off at about 1:30, so maybe possibility one of these days do a pop-up event, run down to a local hotspot for carp here in the Omaha area by Bellevue, Offutt, and go after carp.
Yep, it looks like
We've
fun.
been catching them.
He even was showing the fly that he likes the most is a cottonwood seed. It's a cottonwood blooms, and you get those puff balls everywhere. And he goes, once they hit the lake, man, the carp just start slurping them down. I'm like, really? And he's like, oh yeah. And he showed me one, and I swear that fooled me. I would have thought it was a cottonwood seed, but I think it was like CDC feather and small little hook on it. And I was like, that is so cool looking. So
Cottonwood seeds are good. Mulberry flies are good. When the mulberry bushes are dropping, the carp go crazy for them.
And
there's several other flies too that the carp go for.
The cicadas will be good this year on the carp.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Because I don't see Matt on, but yesterday at JB we were tying up cicadas, so he wanted to do it because his big thing is he loves bass. So it's like, yeah, cicadas are going to be good on bass, and so cicadas could really show us a good time this.
Oh, I'm looking forward. This is my third 13-year cycle. I fished the Current River with cicadas down below the park and catch a nice browns, let me tell you.
All right.
Did it in 2011, did it in 1998. So I've been tying all winter getting ready.
Okay, so yeah, I think
Mick, I'm leaving for the regional meeting. I will see you next week.
All right, we'll see you in a couple minutes, John.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first Tuesday of the month, we meet every Tuesday with our program, but in about 5 minutes, we have a regional, which is all the different within a 5-state of called the Heartland. We have our meeting with the regional, and basically we'll be talking that our big thing we're heading into is the 20th of April will be the Vets Fish Free in Bennett. So we'll be out there. So not everyone's welcome if you want to show up. It's a little bit different this year. We program as a whole ran out a little bit of a funding. So most of it is just going out there ourselves. I'd be there anyway. I love Bennett. I almost call that my home water. So I'll be out there for sure. So, we'll talk a little bit more, and then hopefully we'll see people out there.
Yeah,
right.
I'm going to be I'll be at the Fly Fish Free Day. Remember, I'll be down there.
Yep.
Hopefully by then, I'll have my little tie right ordered, and I did find that hair packer, so I bought the hair packer last week. For that was showing off.
Oh yeah, one of the.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we go over.
New
different-
York, thank you for the lead.
Yeah, and it's, I've got some of the any of the eggs to see egg patterns work really good there, but a lot of the zebra midges really work good at Bennett. That's always my favorite, size 18, 16. So
I
get
can't
ready
see
for
that
those.
small.
Yeah, that's why I got the magnifying glass. So, all right, I'm gonna let you guys go. Sorry I wasn't able to get on the call. I haven't seen family in a bit, and they passed through real quick. So next time I'll be around a little bit longer, and I'll come up with, maybe I'll do the cicada again. And I know Jim's on. Maybe the two of us will tie, because he's tied him up a few times and with those bugs, and anyone's welcome, to tie with us. And Tony, you'll see some of us have some good camera setups where we could really get on the vise and tie some stuff up. So if you have any, pointers for us, please let us know. So
Yeah,
well,
unfortunately, Mick, I'm going to be out of town next Tuesday, so
All right.
I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to make it. I think I'm
That's
coming
fine.
back maybe Tuesday night, so I
Okay.
might be able to make it, but I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Again, these meetings, these Tuesdays are non-mandatory. It's always good to see you, but if something's going on, and you can't make it, no big deal. If you need something from us, please reach out. I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. So, all right, with that, I'm going to let you guys go, and I promise I'll have an email out this time. I was a busy week and all that, so I missed the email. But always know we will be showing up on Tuesday at the Zoom. So even if I forget it, show up at 6 and we'll have our Zoom. So that's all I got.
Thanks a lot, Mick.
You guys
Hey,
take
you guys take care.
Have a good
Thanks,
week,
Frank.
everybody.
Frank, I hope you
Sure.
get better soon.
Thank you.
Prayers for you guys. So,
Good luck.
all right, you guys take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye all. Be safe.